Hi, my name is Janet Marie Stanley, and I'm the host of Beauty, Balance, and Peace, a foundation for weaving voices of peace. I'm here with my dear friend and colleague, Susan Mazonson, who's calling in from New York City, which seems very exciting, so we may get a bit of hit of energy from that. And I want to tell you a little bit about Susan before I bring her on. So Susan is the founder of Midlife Cafe and Mastermind Bridge Makers. She's going to tell us what those programs are about during her talk today. I know her as a transformational coach and facilitator and leader. She is what we've come to call an activator, a change maker. She makes things happen. She's got that can-do attitude. And I also know her as a dear sister peacemaker. So welcome, Susan.
Thank you so much.
Happy to have you join me here today.
Janet, it's always an honor to be in your company. Thank you for having me.
So many delicious topics to explore today, but maybe we can start with what being a peacemaker means to you, or what peace means to you in your life and work today. Susan.
Yes, nothing more important, Janet, and so grateful that you're doing this. For me, I believe that being the best people, the best person that we can each be, will absolutely transform the world. And we will be different with each other. And we will view the world very differently and view ourselves, our connection with ourselves, the connection with the bigger world, the sense of that, and the connection with each other. And that's what peace means to me.
I love it. It feels like you're talking about being yourself on purpose. Right? That purpose has a big part.
There you are with the depth. Absolutely. Absolutely. It does take first a real understanding of who one is. And I've been on that journey. And being, wanting and desiring to raise an awareness and consciousness in the world. And, you know, I do believe that there is such a thing as world peace. I believe it, and it's all part of the journey of our humanity, and even creating and evolving into a new humanity.
Right. And you put a new word in front of me this morning that I hadn't heard before, calling yourself a perennial. Can you tell us what that's all about? I like the sound of it. And if you're one, then I must be one too.
I certainly believe you are, Janet. And the word was somewhat new to me. And I did look, it was mentioned to me this morning in a meeting I was in. And I said, yes, that is me. Thank you so much. You know how sometimes I do intergenerational kinds of conversations and platforms. And what I'm finding is that we are more the same than different. And what I also am blessed with, I believe, is a mindset of a bigger spectrum of coming from a place that sort of crosses the divides and really wants to grow as the world is shifting. And so that and I really didn't get it just out of nowhere. I really, really believe that so much of the wisdom that I've accumulated around that kind of thing is through communication and conversations with younger people, with older people. I must say, particularly our youth, who are evolving much quicker and much more tuned in to where the world is and where it's going.
So I want to circle back to that intergenerational work that you do and the diversity of New York City. But just to finish up, what is a perennial? What's your understanding?
A perennial is, I guess some people think it's a new generation.
Okay.
It's one that transcends the boundaries of age and classifies us as those living in the present time.
Okay.
Yeah. And that ever-changing and regenerating with each passing year is really what that's about. And
Okay.
make
That
sense?
sounds delicious. I'm in. Count me in.
You are there. No doubt about that.
So as a perennial who's anchored in the present, you are uniquely poised to talk about diversity and to talk about intergenerational work. Do you want to say a bit more about that? Because you're also really poised in New York City with so many cultures and so much much humanity and talent and vibrational frequency, high vibration, art, culture.
Yes, indeed. It's Janet, that's why I am in New York City. I wasn't born here, but I think I have the gene for it. And I knew that as soon as the opportunity arose, this was going to be my place. And when it was time to open up my business many years ago, it was back in the very early 80s, I said, well, if I'm going to have this business, it's going to be in the place I want to be and grow in an area that I believe the greatest growth is, and that's New York City. And that's when I moved there, many years ago. I chose to raise my family here, and I choose to remain here as well. You know, some people say, oh, let's go to Florida or something at a different stage in life or experience another place. I find the energy here, you're right, it is an energy. You can walk out your door and passing people from all walks of life, in all stages of life. And you can have conversations with those people. New York isn't as stoic as some people believe it, or it's actually quite a friendly place.
I have experienced it to be very friendly, honestly.
There you go. Yeah. Yes. As my mother would say, really all you need to do is smile. And that's really, you get smiles back, and then you know how contagious that is.
I do.
So
beautiful. And you have your mother living very close to you in your building, actually. Right?
Yes, I do. I actually brought her to New York City as well. And thank you for mentioning that, because that's sort of it's quite significant. My mother comes from a very, very provincial town in the North Shore of Boston, and never lived in a big city. And I thought, what's she going to do? And I brought her about 10 years ago in her 80s, and she took to New York City like a duck in water, and created a whole new life for herself, and made friends all around the proprietors, the stores. You can walk in and out of stores. She became friends with all these people. And when she goes up and down the streets, they come out and kiss her. And I'm saying, who is that? And this place, I've been here for decades, and I, hadn't really, known the people or even much about the places. So it's really incredible learning for me as well. And to see my mother in that mode and see her growing at this stage in her life has been an incredible honor. And it all speaks to sort of the impact we can have on each other as we grow at any stage in life.
It's beautiful modeling for all of us of how to move into our gently aging golden years with grace and beauty and balance. And I got to meet your mom. It was a real privilege, and she is just a joy, as are you.
Thank you.
All right, so we talked about New York City, and do you want to talk a little bit about I see you as, fiercely independent and tenacious, and I think the phrase that you have coined or use often is do whatever it takes. Like the answer is yes, what's the question? So you have all of that, and you put that in service of a very successful career. And now you find yourself at kind of a new chapter, and you want to take the qualities, the good parts of the same energy that helped you build such a successful career into the next chapter. What does that look like for you today?
Wow, what a beautiful way. That's really a beautiful way of articulating this where I'm at in my life, and sort of a very sort of, we're all in transformation most of our lives, but I was particularly uncovered as I stopped for a moment to breathe in my quote previous career, so to speak. I recognized that there was something very missing. I didn't have the kind of fulfillment I wanted to have in my life. I stopped believing necessarily that the work had the meaning that it had in the earlier years. And what I did was I uncovered, I actually hired a coach, and to say, not for this purpose, but she said, I want you to do this, and I did. And she gave me just a little test to determine my intrinsic wiring. And I did that, and what was so profoundly impactful to me was that the qualities that came forward were definitely the qualities I have, but those that I have devalued. And so, for example, as you said, I was sort of whatever it takes kind of a mode of operating and just get it done and make it happen kind of mode. I gave less value to the other sides, to the connectedness, to the relationship side of the business, or of life, you know. The fact that I am wired for that, and that I am wired for truth, and love, and innovation, and wisdom. Those words weren't ever words that I had used in my, quote, previous life, believing that what the world needed for success was a different kind of paradigm, you know, a much more independent, do it, like I said, like you said, whatever it takes, kind of, you know, a way of behaving.
It sounds like you're describing a kind of a masculine model, which, I mean, I have a corporate background too, so I know it was what we found it was the ocean we found ourselves swimming in.
Yes.
But I also know from having been in corporate, and that tenacity is really fueled when it's in service of creativity and innovation and connectedness and relationship. And I've witnessed you and heard your stories around how important that part was too. So I'm really delighted that you're reclaiming those beautiful innate qualities that you embody so beautifully.
Well, as you speak like poetry, Janet. Thank you for that. I love the term reclaiming, because we are who we are. We are born with qualities that then we don't often let come through, let shine. And you know, I was in a mode of looking around me and saying, you know, those are kind of softer qualities, but I'm going to really do and make it in the masculine world. Yeah. And felt that the power, quote, the power and the way to success was within a masculine paradigm with masculine energies. And there's nothing really wrong with that. What mattered though was that I was not so clear and really aware of the depth of the relationship connectedness side that you mentioned as well, that that side was always in service in the business. It was always a win-win with me. What mattered really was the relationship building was really the key to the ultimate key to success. So that, you know, that I'm realizing it now, but I didn't recognize it or acknowledge it as I was going through my hardcore work.
Yeah, it's sometimes hard to see the very thing, you know, hiding in plain sight is a phrase I've heard you use.
Very much so. Very much.
But you have, it feels like your entrepreneurial skills is what I would call them, were there right from the beginning. You talked about being a carnival barker at one time and a door-to-door Fuller Brush saleswoman.
Yep. That's right. I did. I kind of did whatever it took to kind of make some money. I was determined to quote make it on my own, and that I was going to put myself through school. I was going to do whatever it took, once again, to not have to depend on others.
Right.
Yeah, so it's pretty profound, actually.
And you did that, like you said earlier, always keeping in mind a win-win outcome.
Yes.
And that's a very feminine attribute, to be relational, to care. So it wasn't at all costs. It wasn't on stamping on people. It was by innovating, creating, and doing the hard work needed, which is in service to you even today.
Thank you for that. Yes, that is the truth. And while I was going door to door, I'm thinking about this now. People would joke about, oh, you put your foot in the door before they close the door. I said, sometimes I do, but I did it in a way that was so much fun and funny, and that people
There's a big smile on your face, I bet. Who could resist?
So I got into the households and sold lots of stuff. Not stuff they didn't want, stuff that, they really,
Well, who doesn't need another fuller brush? Come on now.
The favorite was those smelling strawberry sprays, sprays that smelled like fruit. That was the big deal then too. So they added on.
All right. So what about today? What are you using all that formidable talent and consciousness? Because you're pulling it together now in a very intentional and awake and wide open, curious, with a desire to make a difference, is what I've heard you talk about.
Yes.
What's opening up around embracing that and allowing yourself to evolve into the woman you are now becoming?
Yes. My first sense about this, Janet, was the revelation of my own truth, and was that I want to be able to put these kinds of principles into the world, to reach also to younger people, to not, it's sort of generational in some ways. Why should anyone wait another 30 years to find their own truth, and that there is such a thing, and to raise awareness and consciousness and what really matters to them, and their contribution to the world. Mm-hmm. So I put together, and I've done this for the last several years actually, groups of people, cohorts, into a mastermind structure, where with people with different backgrounds, and we would have conversations around these important issues of the day, the various energies, the masculine, feminine energy that we all have in us, and really dig deep into how we are all using them, and to discern the differences, and how we can create more harmony within ourselves, and what that means for leadership, and what that means to how we relate, not just to ourselves, but to others. Right. I think that goes back to why we're here, in the service of each other, in service to peace, ultimately. Peace
for the planet.
Yes.
First within, right? Within, yes. And then to our families and communities, and then the outer world.
That's it. Yes, thank you.
You were talking about your masterminds, and I think it relates to Midlife Cafe, and your tag for that is Conversations That Matter.
That's right.
And it feels like that's what you're hosting. Conversations, not about the weather. Well, climate change might be a little bit about the weather. But, and I think that I love that, because that's what I feel like this peacemaking conversation is about as well. It's a living dialogue around things that make a difference.
No question about it. The real Conversations That Matter was the very beginning of how I started doing interviews with people in my orbit, people who had been very successful, and from different walks of life, but that were known successes. And I've had long conversations about their lives, the little ebbs and flows of their lives, what were their particular events or sort of life-changing, pivotal parts of their experiences in their journeys. I learned an awful lot about that, and how decisions were made. And I related it also to myself. The thing that I found was that, like me at that time, that most of these people, these very successful people, did not feel particularly fulfilled.
Mm.
And I, you know, and I was thinking and talking and having conversations around, well, does fulfillment mean? And so much of the fulfillment is connecting with people, community, building community,
Mm-hmm.
Being seen and heard, knowing that you really mattered. It wasn't that you made a lot of money or maybe had a big position.
Mm-hmm.
That ultimately was not what it meant to really feel like you're living your best life on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started gathering people, and I gathered, kind of curated a way, people who are growth oriented,
Mm-hmm.
different generations and different backgrounds in these conversational cafes. And it did start actually with midlifers, people like me, but I knew it had to be broader. And so I recognized that really my first love is the diversity and the wisdom that comes from those kinds of conversations. And transformation happens. As we go, we also do exercises within our masterminds to help people connect with themselves and with the others.
Mm-hmm.
And on every mastermind we've had, and they've all been different, that there's every person walks away with a shift in their thinking, a shift in the way they actually have their conversations with other people. And sometimes there's been shifts in people's jobs, in their careers. They make those kinds of decisions. We've had people create very successful crowdfunding, platforms, and to be able to go to their next step in their lives. So, a lot of things have come from that. I could go on and on and on about that, but
I love it. Keep going. It's. I think that I attended a medicine circle last night, an indigenous one, and that was really the theme, was having conversations. To be able to talk in a depth way about the things that are having our attention right now, that are
Yes.
uniting us and making us feel more passionate and more aware of what it is we want to do and be and grow into.
Yes, Janet, and that speaks to most things. I know that you have those kinds of conversations as well, and I found that they exist everywhere if you make it so. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I was facilitating a beautiful roundtable a couple of evenings ago around the intergenerational theme. Mm-hmm. And what came, it was very, very engaging, and it was just a beautiful roundtable, and people felt very connected and very, very quickly. And there was an overriding theme was really understanding particularly this was about the workplace, mm-hmm. and it applies everywhere. What is it? How is it that other people other generations too have different mindsets because they grew up in a different way with different technologies and different expectations. Mm-hmm. And so often all it takes, there may be a shift in a not understanding and a miscommunication. All it takes is just oftentimes explain why we're doing something, how it relates to the values of the people that you're working with. What are their values? Let's have those conversations. The water cooler conversation of depth. And a lot of those themes came came through in that roundtable as well. Well, just as an example of a very recent, not necessarily intentional way of creating more depth, in your orbit, whatever reference group you're in particular.
Beautiful. I love it. So connection and conversation and balance. Balance is a big piece right now for you as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is indeed. In fact, that's where, and I know this is a controversial language around masculine, feminine. I mean, all we really, in the balance in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all we really mean is a certain kind of energy, a certain quality of energy. And it requires not one or the other. It requires not more than a balance. It's really more, this came out of my masterminds as well. It's really more of a harmony of how the interplay. It's like a dance between determining or discerning in certain situations, you know, what kind of energy is best for this way of communicating, or is best to be with this or that person, and how am I being now? Am I a bit too forceful, or, you know, wanting to get to the point where the person I'm speaking with could very well just need to have a greater understanding, greater depth, rather than go full board into, you know, a project or, you know, a particular something that needed to be done. So just to be clearer, I do believe that ultimately, and I'm going to use that language, and some people use the word, you know, the relational IQ, conversational IQ, but I think ultimately, or you can use yin yang, for example, or yin yang, the balancing or the harmony of those energies. And if you remember the yin yang symbol, that has really a curve in it, and is a black side, the earth side, sort of more the feminine, than the white side. And then there's two dots in each one that have the opposite shade. So the white dot in the black side and the black dot in the white side. And I think that really typifies visually what that kind of harmony dance is all about. And for us to really understand what those qualities are and what those energies are, what it feels like in our bodies. And that takes practice, because I never understood that before. This is really new for me in this journey that is so critical in really when we look at and attempt to unravel some of the changes, the volatility and the uncertainties in the world today, which is all good. You know, it's evolving, and it can be very, very uncomfortable for many of us, you know, with how we're connecting and the abilities we have to connect. That also creates many challenges as well as opportunities.
It sounds like you're talking about the importance of that things aren't either or anymore. They're always and.
Yes.
It's understanding from multiple perspectives. So intergenerational is one of the multiple perspectives, and there's cultural, racial, gender, financial, resourced, you know, developing versus developing countries, and all of the different geographical things, you know, whether you're city or rural, or so. Yes. There's a lot to consider at this time.
Well, you certainly brought us to a very big picture, and I really appreciate that when we look at that the and, right, the not just either or, both and I found that actually in the way I started with this was actually with my own family, and I recognized I never really was so committed to my success that I often sort of gave it short shrift. I'm doing this stuff on my own in the world. And I recognized that, oh my goodness, what richness we have in my own family. And I saw it, we actually have 5 generations in just an immediate family, from between my millennial daughter, and I have 2 Gen X stepdaughters, my husband and I, and my 95-year-old mother. There are 5 generations in that. And I found that and I recognized it after I tapped the wisdom of each generation for something that I needed, or I wasn't sure of, or I felt I was judging in ways that were ineffective and inappropriate. And so I would actually tap the wisdom of one or more of those generations to understand the others. So for example, even sometimes I would question my millennial daughter and what is she doing and why type of thing. And I would often get advice from from my Gen Xers, who would say, you know, Susan, you know, what you're expecting is a very masculine approach to X, Y, or Z. And I thought, oh my goodness, I never even had that masculine, feminine conversation with them. And here we were. And so it was quite revealing. And they gave me some advice on how my younger daughter actually operates in the world, which is not in a very strong masculine way. In fact, there's way more feminine qualities that are just so exquisite and have served her very, very well. And I'm so appreciative and actually in awe of, and that's helped me become better as well in recognizing that and understanding it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. But you know, I have a 1-year-old grandson living with me, and I can tell you, there isn't a day goes by that he doesn't teach me something really profound. So it starts early.
Is that it's quite phenomenal. You know, and I could, is it okay to share another side of that? I'm experiencing it with my mother, who's now 95. And we've had some conversations that have been extraordinarily profound and literally, I think, has changed me in a very visceral way. And conversations around her view that she offers up, saying that she believes that she's really growing. And she's growing in ways that she hasn't before, and is actually sees herself differently and sees other people differently. She is much less critical or judgmental, not that she was that much before, but very perceptibly open, very, very open. Of course, always with a smile. That was always my mom's theme, you know. And when I heard that how proud she was of herself in claiming that new growth at 95 years old, I felt actually things shift in me. And it got me to think and believe that we actually can have those kinds of huge, profound, transformative changes in ourselves when we experience that with others around us, particularly how I've experienced it with my family. And I can't tell you how grateful I am to be alive in these times, and to be able to build the kind of relationships with my family in this time in my life.
Yeah. It feels like what you're naming, Susan, is, you know, the reality of interconnectedness. That when we transform in ourselves or witnesses, we are related. We feel and respond to and grow from each other's experience. So that's a really beautiful kind of full circle way of coming close to our time together. It goes by so fast when we're connected in this way.
Yes.
As we come to a close, is there something that you'd like to leave our listeners with, or that maybe we haven't had a chance yet to visit?
I think the first thing that everyone needs to, if they care to grow and feel the best that they can feel in their lives, really need to find the way to be the best self they can be, as we say, and however that journey, right, brings you. And I also believe that, and this was told to me years ago and I didn't understand it years ago, but now I truly embody it, is that humans, we are here to serve each other. And when we do that, that's where we get the greatest fulfillment and make the biggest impact towards peace in the world.
Amen to that. I feel that the connection that the invitation I've been extending and the connection I've been reaching for is that to people who are sharing their gifts purposefully and generously in service of a peaceful planet for us all. So I want to thank you so much, Susan,
Yes,
for doing the work that you're doing and for being so much yourself on purpose and sharing so generously. I value your presence in my life and in the world, and thank you so much.
Well, Janet, you know that my belief of what you are doing for this planet already, just being yourself, and what you bring is quite phenomenal. That I knew when I first met you, and now I see you're taking this further, and this ripple effect, I truly believe, will be absolutely massively impactful. And I can't thank you enough for doing this work, for including me in it, and for being who you are.
Thank you, Susan. Stay tuned. We're just getting started. Much more to come. So we're going to say goodbye for now, but just so long. All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.